Hello, this is Saul Luckman. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Conversations on Saul Luckman Uncensored, sponsored by snooze2awaken.com, resources for lucidity. For more information about my work, including tons of cutting-edge free content, visit crowrising.com. I'm also on Telegram at t.me/Saul Luckman, and I'm also on Substack at saulluckman.substack.com. So please check out my worlds there. I would love for you to mark your calendar for Errant Fest, Decoding the Simulation to Survive and Thrive Together. This is coming September 22nd through 24th to a virtual location in the comfort of your own home. Stay in the loop by signing up for the chat at substack.com/chat/869093. And the website for Errant Fest will be up soon. So be on the lookout for that as well. And my esteemed guest will be presenting at Errant Fest. So I'm very excited about that. If you're a researcher, author, influencer, or content creator interested in talking visionary fiction, energy medicine, shamanism, simulation theory, and related topics with me on this show, by all means, drop me a line. Today, Saul Luckman Uncensored welcomes one of my favorite content producers flying under the radar, as it were. John J. Singleton of the @PrivacyFight YouTube channel modestly bills himself as an quote, entrepreneur of 30 years, working with small business owners, professionals, and consumers and managing financial risk. But what this somewhat vanilla description doesn't come close to conveying is that the guy is an absolute genius when it comes to smartly and safely navigating the ins and outs of the monetary and legal systems. John J. and I we are not financial, legal, or tax advisors, and nothing in our conversation today should be construed as anything but for purposes of education and entertainment. That said, buckle up. Welcome to Saul Luckman Uncensored, John J. I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to picking your fine brain with an audience.
Thank you, Saul. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you.
You know, I came across your work, I want to say a few years ago during the C-19 fiasco. I think you were on a couple of episodes with Peggy Hall, the Healthy American. And you were looking at ways of kind of, combating the tyranny and all that stuff going on. And it was very fascinating. So I began what ended up being a very lengthy exploration of your work. And I have to say, it's just absolutely amazing. I came at some of what you've been doing from a long history of looking into different types of freedom and sovereignty strategies and movements, going all the way back to things like redemption in the early 2000s and stuff like that, when all this stuff was kind of percolating and whatnot. And I found your approach to be like refreshingly above board and non-arcane. There's no gobbledygook. It's all kind of in the statutory world. It's navigating the system as it is and playing the game very smartly. And I thought, oh, finally, someone is just teaching people how to play the game. So
well, I look at the statutory system you're referring to as a tool. Just because you're going to use it, it doesn't make you one of those creatures. That's where a lot of people don't understand. They think that we cannot use corporations because that makes you a slave. No. If I use a lawnmower to cut my grass, it doesn't make me a lawnmower.
I love that.
Yeah, so corporations are tools, and sometimes I use them, and then I just focus on property rights. I don't care what the statutes are. I understand them so that I can avoid liability. A statute is a lien or a claim. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to use or rely on a statute to get permission to do something that I already had permission to do because it's mine. And I'm going to change my property rights in a way that I don't have a liability that the creatures in the government might conclude I have. So that make a lot of people are interested to know how in the heck can I run a business and make lots of money and not have any tax liability. And it's the way you do it is you just simply structure the way you're using the property, the income, in a way that does not create a taxable gain by their own definition. It's not complicated.
It really isn't. I mean, a lot of people want to make this kind of thing super complicated, and there are all of these different strategies out there, and super complicated, often very, very expensive to set up and maintain. And what
Yep.
you're doing is creating kind of an elegant solution for a person or a business, a group of people that
Yeah.
could come together to do things without a lot of paperwork and a lot of
Right.
just busyness.
Yeah, I've even had it's so simple that many times someone will be referred to me and I'll get them on the phone and they'll say my friend said to call you because of this scenario. And I'll give you a typical example of that. And I will answer the question, I will tell them their scenario, I will explain what the legal rights are and things because their attorney doesn't do that. Their attorney will scare them so that they'll hire the attorney and then pay him $10,000 and then he'll end up where he would have been had he not hired the attorney, you know. So the typical call I get is I'm being sued by let's say my credit card company is suing me personally, right? So of course, let's say they win, they're going to win because you're going to fight it, whatever, it doesn't matter if you fight it. So let's say the credit card company wins, and so any money that that person has, even in a business, even a separate business, is subject to levy for his own personal debt. And you would think, well, if I set up a company, isn't that separate from my own personal debt? Yeah, it is, but not by default. You have to use the company for what it was intended. If you just go to your accountant and ask him, what do you do? He'll just set up your company so he can do his accounting job better. He doesn't care about your risk management. So here's how simple it is. I ask him, a person will say, yeah, I have a business. I'm painting. I have a painting service, right? And it's an S Corp. Okay, it's an S Corp. Who owns the company? I do. You own all of it? Uh-huh, 100%. Okay, here's your problem. Your first problem is cost of litigation. If you want to defend yourself, you're going to need to hire an attorney because you don't know how to do all this stuff, right? So that right there is going to cost you money. Then in the end, he's just going to turn you over to the plaintiff. You're going to end up paying him somehow, you know, or he's going to sell you to his buddy to do a bankruptcy because that's all that guy knows. So your cost of litigation is the first thing. The other part of it is because you have exclusive ownership in the company, it's a sitting duck. So whatever the company's making, you could be poor. Your salary could be $50,000 a year, but your company's making $2.5 million. That creditor is going to want to step into your company and take out whatever money it claims you owe and not have to wait for it, not have to wait for your paycheck to, pay over 20 years. And it will be able to do so unless you do one thing. One thing. You don't need to argue it. You don't need to go to court. You don't need a special purpose trust. All you have to do is call up your brother and ask if it's okay if you put his name on the articles as an owner. Now, that doesn't mean he gets any part of your company. It's just a name, right? So you amend the articles with the state. It costs $50 typically. You file an amendment to your articles of your company, your S corp. Once those articles are filed, it will preclude the creditor, even if he wins, from going into the company for your individual personal debt. The company is safe and secure now because the money in the company is no longer owned by you individually. It's now owned by you and another person who is completely not related to the situation. So
Yes.
I've told many people that over the years, and business people are pretty smart. When I explain this, I maybe have to tell them a couple of times a different way, and they finally get it. In the end, they go, okay, so I just have to amend the articles and put my mom on there or something. Yep, that's pretty much everything. Yep, and you can ignore the situation. There's a couple other things I have to do. So that's the end of it. Many times they'll just say thank you very much, have a nice day, and I never hear from them because that is enough to solve their problem. But really, this is how simple it is. You change your property rights, and they can't be used against you to take your stuff.
It's just staring you in the face. It's just amazing. I mean, we don't have to worry about being underwater or special estates that we're born with,
Exemptions and
exemptions, or
consequences.
any of that kind of thing.
Look at cryptos. People think cryptos are taxable. Okay, good luck trying to pay your tax in cryptos. If you can't pay your tax in cryptos, how the heck is it taxable? It's it's the dollars that are being taxed. The
What about
value of
taxes
cryptos,
levied on real estate? Because you're obviously not paying your
real
tax
estate
on
too.
real estate.
Oh yeah, I mean when you sell the real estate and you get dollars for it, because you're not going to pretty much get anything else. Even if you got something else, let's say you got gold or something. The government's still going to say, well, we're going to value that at this date on this much dollars. And so they're going to send you a bill for that. So instead of taking it in your name, you're not going to be able to change your 1040 tax liability. It's going to show up. You're going to get a 1099, right? Well,
Yeah.
all you care about in that is if you want to legally avoid the capital gains tax on the sale of real estate, before the sale, you simply file a quitclaim deed. You have to file and record this because you cannot rely on the closing agent or your attorney because they will never do the right thing. They will say they will, and you'll be stuck in the end with the 1099.
Good advice.
Yeah, you want to convey the title. Now you have a legal right to do this because you're not selling it before the sale. You're just conveying the title for estate planning purposes, right? The beneficial interests remain the same. You still care about it. It was in your name before, now it's not, but you still have the same interest in it, right? So you convey it to the company, and then when the closing takes place, the closing agent has no choice but to pay the money to the company, and the company gets a 1099. And just because it gets a 1099, it does not have to file a tax return. That's illegal for it not to file a tax return. Whereas if you did it, all hell breaks loose, right? So now that you have all this money sitting over there that's subject to capital gains, no problem there. All we've done is make it deferred. And how long is it deferred for? As long as you want it.
Right. It's basically
You
forever.
decide. You decide because the tax liability comes when you file a tax return. It's not when you get an EIN. It's not when you get an SSN. It's not when you sign anything except a tax return and file it with the government. As soon as the government accepts your tax return, you have a tax liability. Well, what does that tell you? Before you did that, you did not have a tax liability. So what the heck are you filing for?
So
That's the difference.
technically, this would not even be classified as tax avoidance. This is just tax deferral.
Yeah, you're not liable to pay the sales tax in El Salvador. That's nothing to do with you, right? Why would you be paying an income tax on something that you haven't realized a gain for? Like cryptos, people think when their cryptos go up in dollars, the value goes up again, the dollar. They think that's taxable, and their accountant ignorantly tells them it's taxable, and then it's not taxable. But as soon as they follow their ignorant accountant's advice and file a tax return claiming the value change is taxable, then it becomes taxable. Who's going to argue with you when you're saying under penalty of perjury to the United States with a 5-year prison sentence that you're lying that you owe tax on this? No one's going to educate you. That's
Wow.
the problem. You're being tricked into doing something that's against your own self-interest, and you think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so people's own better selves are being used against them in many ways
Yeah,
here.
you have the thinking that you want to do the right thing and tell the truth and be honest, and we all do, and we should. And I'm not saying to be dishonest. What I'm saying is you're being tricked into creating a liability for yourself that never existed until you ignorantly did it.
Isn't that also the case with individual filing?
That is true about the individual tax return filing a 1040. Now, I don't promote people not filing 1040s and tax returns. I don't promote that, but I do structure businesses so that they don't need to file a return. I don't do anything with the 1040. If you want to do that, that's up to you. But as far as the business goes, what I do is create a pass through. And then I use the business as a person to change the property rights and hold them outside of the person's estate, like my client's estate, so that he can escape all these traps that have been set up for the money. So that gives you clear title to your money that you can do whatever you want with it.
That also involves probate, correct?
You can avoid probate this way. Yeah, I mean, you take things out of your estate, and they cannot be probated. Like I've got one right now where I realize there's a big demographic of men who are not getting married because they see that the woman is being subsidized and causing divorce or creating divorce or divorcing the husband and taking half his stuff. Right? Typically, it doesn't always work that way, and sometimes it's unfair. Many times it's unfair. Well, that's because people get into those relationships, and I'm not saying a marriage creates that. I'm saying a marriage is part of it, but cohabitating, living with two men, a man and woman living together, that gives the court jurisdiction if one of the people want to go to the court and make a complaint. Okay, you don't have to be married to have this situation. So what I created was a postnuptial agreement, and it can involve any two people that are living together. But the postnuptial agreement, it removes all the chattels property from the marital community, like all the stuff in the household, that's furniture, heirloom jewelry, appliances, electronics, all that stuff gets put into an irrevocable trust that's held inside the postnuptial agreement. And then we have a term in the agreement that precludes the court from taking jurisdiction because we assign a binding arbitration process. So whenever there's a dispute, it has to go through arbitration, which eliminates the entire body of legislative enactments that have been designed to subsidize divorce.
Amazing. And
It's just with one contract that we
in
can
a
do on a piece.
tongue-in-cheek way, you sort of call this divorcing the state,
It's
right?
divorcing the state, exactly. So I'm not saying divorce each other. I'm just saying you can divorce the state. Now, if it happens to where you need a separation or something, well, great. Now you have a chance to act like mature adults and work it out, and with the help of a mediator, okay? And then that also would preclude the state. And here's the other thing too, that's the benefit of this is it precludes the court from taking your children and trafficking them, which y'all should be really concerned about. But we
Hmm.
can do this with just using our rights. We have a contract right, and we exercise it. If we put it in writing, the court can't intrude on our marriage or our live-in relationships.
Yes, it's just so powerful and straightforward as can be. It really, really is.
Very simple. Lately, I've been showing people. It just came to my attention. Okay, so I've been watching. I read this book of Surveillance Capitalism.
I know about that. Hmm.
Shoshana Zuboff. She's a fantastic writer. Very detailed. Very, very technical. But she was explaining how our data, which you can't even possibly imagine what that means. Okay, I'm not even going to get into that right now. But if I were to tell you about the data that's being collected on every one of us, you'd probably vomit. It's horrific what they're doing. Okay, you have no idea. When someone's using his phone for anything other than a phone call, he's just really being exploited. You should not be using your phone for shopping while you're driving, of course. Just never use it except I keep mine at my desk. And so I use it for phone calls and texting. But anyways, so what I figured is, okay, why is it so important? Why is all this data being collected? And then when I did the research, I found that there's a multi-billion-dollar market cap in what are called data brokers with technology and equipment, hardware and software, and legal procedures and policies. Okay, this is coming up and down in all the states, by which organizations can collect your data, collect it, store it, and use it for profit. Now, they'll always say it's not for profit, but it is. Now, because it is valuable to these companies, we have to understand this verifies what I'm going to tell you. It is property. So my image that appears on my driver's license is property. The question is, whose property is it? If I don't make a claim on it, it's the state's because it's on my driver's license. The state captured my image and it's the state's property now. It's abandoned property because it was
Abandoned.
mine.
Yes.
So how do I make a claim on that?
Well, I know.
Yeah, okay. I talk like that. I ask rhetorical
No, I
questions.
like it. It's a good
Yeah,
teaching
I learned that
technique.
from
I
my
like it.
teacher at school. Yeah.
Well, I
So,
learned it
so
from you.
yeah. So here's what you do. So it's the same thing that your lender would do. It's the same thing that you would do if you're a songwriter to secure your intellectual property rights on a song you've written, okay, or a piece of music you composed. Muhammad Ali's estate, okay, Marilyn Monroe's estate. These people all know this. Okay, what I'm about to tell you. So you describe it, okay? If you can describe it, you can claim it. If you haven't claimed it and it can be described, you've abandoned it. It's property. So what I'm suggesting is you describe it as private property. It's your private property, and you write it up in a security agreement. A security agreement works just like your mortgage. When the mortgage is recorded, I know we have mortgage statutes and things that have allow a foreclosure to take place and whatever. It governs that industry. But the mortgage instrument itself, the thing you signed, that is the law of the mortgage, the lien, the claim on your property. That's a law.
Mm,
It's called a statute staple. The
yes.
court cannot get around it. That's why they foreclose on everything, even if it's fraud. I mean, even if the attorneys come in there and commit fraud and forge notes and stuff, because they're not gonna get around the statute staple. So to claim your property, you do the same thing. You write up a security agreement. Now, the reason why it's an agreement is not because someone signed for it on the other side. It's because someone benefited from the use of your private property. So once you describe it that way, and then you claim yourself as the secured party. Okay, you're the lender, and the recipient, the one who collected your data and is using it and storing it, like for example, your DMV or Google or Apple or whoever, Amazon, okay, that's your debtor.
Mm, hmm.
So you write up this document and you file it in your county and you file with the Secretary of State. So now you've made a claim and there's dollar amounts in there and there's liquidated damage in there. It's a regular contract. It's like a royalty agreement, okay? I'm not saying you set this up so you go sue somebody. You could if you wanted to, but what I'm suggesting is you do this for just the pennies that we can calculate what your likeness is worth. Your likeness consists of, your fingerprints, your image, the way you walk. All these things are collecting about us, right? your retinal patterns, that is all something that has value and you can put a price on that. Once you do that, the lien appears on public records. And after about, I would say 2 accounting quarters, it's going to begin appearing on the balance sheets of all these corporations that are collecting your data as a liability.
So to break that down for people, you're basically suggesting that this is a kind of resistance strategy,
Yes. Yeah, if
effectively.
you want my data and I have no reasonable right of privacy, expectation of privacy, right? Because the Supreme Court said so, right? Okay, well then you're going to pay me for it.